Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this Brightspot webinar called What to Expect After COVID-19. We have a full load of content here and a lot of great information that we look forward to sharing with you. So much of what we've been seeing in the marketplace has been either looking backwards or looking down at where we are today. We felt like it was time to look forward and try to give you our opinions on what to expect for the future of what we're calling the next normal for incentive travel. So we've scheduled this for 30 minutes. We easily have 30 full minutes of content. We normally try to get done in about 20 or 25 minutes and leave 5 to 10 for questions. I'm sure today we'll go 30 minutes of presentation, and then we will stay on as long as anybody else does for Q&A. So let's see. On today's speakers, we have a very impressive group of people. I'm Mike May. I'm president of Brightspot. Also have Kim Fox, who's our director of meetings and incentive travel. Michael Butler, who's one of our director of strategic accounts and a past president of Psyche Texas and active with Psyche in other capacities. And then Julie Blank, another director of strategic accounts here at Brightspot, who is also presently on the Psyche Texas board. What I would tell about each of them is they have over 10 years experience in this space. They're some of the most expert people that we're going to, we could possibly include. We have 2 other next normal, what to expect events coming in the future. Next Thursday, the 14th, what to expect post-COVID for meetings, and after that, what to expect for road shows. We will take questions at the end. At the top, you'll see this little circle, so chat in your questions along the way. We'd love to respond to those. So jumping into today's topic list, we have 12 areas of expectation that we're going to cover. You see the list here, beginning with some of the thought process that goes into selecting the location and then into a lot of the on-site execution. So the first expectation area we're going to talk about is a little bit of a glance at the 2020 view. And this was a fantastic study that was done by Incentive Research Foundation during the first 2 weeks of April that looked at what companies were doing. The conclusion was that most trips were postponing rather than canceling. So you see the yellow bar is longer than the aqua bar. But Julie, I think you were going to share with us a little bit about what Brightspot saw as we moved from the first 2 weeks of April when the study was done through the last 2 weeks of April.
Yeah, Mike, we've seen a lot of movement with programs, obviously, as many have. Working right now with a digital media client who had a trip scheduled for April in Cabo. We rebooked and signed addendums for September, and then as of this week, we are now bumping into January of 2021. So very much what we're seeing with our clients is mirroring what this IRF study is saying as well.
Yeah, I know I described our schedule to one person that it felt like a bulldozer came through and pushed everything from the spring that occurred in April, May, and June all the way out to the fall. Then the bulldozer circled the neighborhood and came back with the number of programs again into 2021. So we just wanted to share that, both the IRF perspective and what we're seeing on the Let's see. This was a fascinating study done by the McKinsey Company. If you've not seen it or read it, I would recommend it to you. I highlight it because the reimagination section is what we've done internally. Kim Fox has led a process for us where we reimagined what the next normal was. So just wanted to give you that perspective. And then we're going to go into our second area of expectation, which is really all about consumer psyche. I think this is an area that's not talked about enough. You know, we often talk about what is possible from a safety standpoint, what local authorities are doing, but not thinking about how consumer psyche has been affected by this process. Michael, I think you were going to share with us about this VIX index.
Yes, happy Thursday, everybody. This one's interesting. I love following the markets and it's one to keep your eyes on. The VIX index, it's been dubbed the fear gauge. So I bet we all remember that week before St. Patrick's Day when those bright lights of this coronavirus came upon us. And you can see that week's run up to 82 here on this chart, right there on March 16th, that Chicken Little Monday when the sky was falling. Thankfully, this volatility index has been trending down since then, down another 10% today, Mike, to just over 30. It provides a measure of market risk and investor sentiment, representing a useful stock market expectation of volatility over the next 30 days. So for me, it's a bearing point which brings some good news these days. So again, keep your eye on it.
Yeah, I think the more people feel comfortable with their portfolios in other areas, the more likely they are that they will get on an airplane and be willing to travel.
Yeah, and this one's interesting. This is one of those sharp curves you hate to see from straight up in the top left to the horizon line. So on groups, this continuum we've all experienced with this fall off in group size being able to travel. We seem to be poised to come shooting off the bottom here as sentiment shifts to a new normal, albeit with smaller groups leading the way. I've got a group personally hoping, incentive travel group, we're hoping to still bring to Iceland this summer, maybe our first trip coming out of this COVID crisis. But smaller groups will lead us back.
Yeah, I think, Michael, some of the really good news that maybe the media isn't focusing on so much right now is that we're really starting to see more and more of an increase in traveler optimism, which is exciting. Research that was done recently by Skyscanner suggested that 85% of Americans believe it'll be safe to fly domestically by this fall, and 74% believe that international flights will be safe. So that's really encouraging news. Another survey that was conducted by iVisa, which is an online travel visa processing site, asked first North Americans when they would consider traveling again. You can see here, a little bit of hesitation now, but 43% saying July, September, with only 15 really looking, into 2021 before they travel. They also asked the global audience the same question. Basically similar answers, but maybe a little more preference for fall travel here, but still a large majority looking to travel within 2020. So I think we know, because we're all in this industry, that travel is a really personal thing, and things changing rapidly. So there's fear out there, but I think as people start to get out more, start to see social media posts with their friends at the beach, that, we're really going to see a comeback here in this.
Julie, I'm always a data person. I think it's interesting if you grab the three left bars and squeeze them together and total them up. It's pretty close to the stat that you just covered on the prior page. And let's see, with that, one final thing in this area, we've talked a little bit about what we could consider, I use the term extreme measures, which be if we need to do temperature checks on site versus reasonable precautions. If we are still in an environment in the fall where we feel like we need to do temperature checks, while that may be appropriate for incentive travel, I doubt that the companies and the attendees will make the trip. For a business meeting, we might see temperature checks, but I have a feeling that if it requires those temperatures, incentive travel will delay a little bit longer. But I think things like Purell sanitizer on the desk that give people a little bit of peace of mind will still be a great thing to do. So with that, we want to talk a little bit about preferred destinations, which is a good segue from what Julie talked about of traveling domestically versus traveling internationally.
Yeah, always one of my favorite parts of the incentive travel continuum, figuring out the right destinations for the client's next winter trip. And, preferred destinations, it's kind of that question we're asking ourselves, each other, others are asking of us. Safe versus perception challenge is kind of how we boiled it down here. So perceived safe, as most of us sit somewhere comfortable in North America, we may feel more comfortable with destinations in our region over the next year. especially for larger, medium, and larger size trips. Conversely, the thought of China or Italy, and unfortunately even Spain, where they were hit hardest, these perception challenges throughout the year and maybe even beyond could persist, although we certainly hope not. And of course, if you're dialed in from east of the Atlantic, it's the reverse for you, where folks, friends in Europe, may be looking at hotspots in the U.S. and thinking the whole United States, well, maybe it's better to stay close to home for the next year or so. I was on a call with a supplier down in South Africa the other day, planning a program, and they were talking about all their news channel is New York City. So I think poor New York's going to have its harder time with some of these red spots over the next year or so with the perception challenge.
Yeah, that's a great point. If people are sitting over in Europe, they may view U.S. as the real hot spot in the world. And then, we also highlighted the cruise ships there who really, they got some adverse press, so they may struggle a little bit with bouncing back quite as quickly. So with that, we now go to sourcing. We think in this new environment, this next normal, that how we source and choose properties is going to be even more important. So Kim Fox, I think you had something to share with us on this point.
Yes, thanks, Mike. So in the RFP process, we're recommending sending a risk and safety assessment to your vendors, specifically hotels and DMCs, to be able to understand their processes and procedures during an emergency. This is probably something you already have in place. Most companies do. We do at Brightspot, but we are now including some COVID-specific questions to that document so that we can ensure that the destination and properties that we're considering are providing a safe, healthy, and hygienic environment for our attendees. Some questions that you might want to include in that document are what are their sanitizing and cleaning practices in guest rooms and public spaces? Many hotels are already publishing those. Does the destination have quality health care to handle COVID-19 cases? What are the number of reported cases in that destination? And what is the hotel or DMC doing regarding their employees as far as testing them before they come back to work to serve our guests? When researching properties, we're recommending looking for opportunities where you can do private buyouts, specifically smaller boutique properties that will give you more control and less variables. With regards to hotel contracts and force majeure, we're all becoming very familiar with that. We are finding most hotels and DMCs are offering more flexibility than just force majeure in terms of moving dates and deposits with very small penalties. In general, most are going above and beyond what is stated in the contract to help clients, and we feel that trend is probably going to continue.
Yeah, Kim, I think that's a great point, that I've been impressed with how flexible the hotels have been, because I think we'll enter a phase where legal departments will want to over-rotate on expanding force majeure clauses quite a bit. So let's see, the next step we're going to talk about is extra registration questions. So Julie, you had something for us on that.
I did indeed. So, as we're launching registration for rebooked programs or new programs moving forward, we think it's really going to be important how we're communicating as we kind of learn to walk this fine line between mitigating risk and liability and also not scaring our attendees to kind of stay home and not take a trip. So we'll be requesting a little more information from our attendees during registration, and we'll also be providing more information, for our attendees. So, starting with the information that we'll want to be providing, if we're going to ease their minds and send this message that we're prepared and cautious, it'll be important for us to set expectations on interaction and behaviors, whether that's no handshakes or other physical touch. We'll have mandatory sanitation stations and elevator and bathroom monitors. So I think it's important for our attendees that we really paint the picture of what this entire experience is going to look like for them, to give them the sense of comfort and security. We'll also want to share the hotel precautions, that Kim would talk a little bit about, their sanitation protocols, and our on-site plans for preparedness, how we will plan on responding to any suspected illnesses and that kind of thing. We're also going to have to request more information. So, there'll be more medical screening questions, and much like a throwback to the Zika days when pregnant women, were at risk, we're going to have to be asking about individual considerations associated with maybe age, underlying medical conditions, and things like that. So I think we're going to have to tread really carefully here, because this could potentially raise sensitivity with personal privacy concerns for sure. But, a lot of it is information that we're really going to need to be able to operate the trip. So I think last but definitely not least is that we're going to have to ask our attendees to confirm their understanding of these policies and expectations, which is really just kind of a nice way of saying that we're going to have to require that some waivers be signed. So, likely at registration, we'll have waivers, and on site, waivers that ask about recent travels, or, have them sign something saying that they haven't had a fever or sickness for the previous 14 days, and their agreement to notify us, our staff, if sickness does occur on site. So, a lot of things to think through from a liability perspective. We've begun implementing some of these waivers. We've launched a couple of registration sites and have had some of these, waivers blessed by corporate legal teams so far. So, if this is something that you're thinking about for your next incentive trip, reach out, and we're happy to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Julie. So next we're going to talk about safe travels. We've certainly seen that some in the newspaper about what airlines are doing. That's going to be both airline and the ground transportation operators. So Michael, I think you have something for us here.
Yeah, safe travels. This seems to be the moving target. Like most of you all, I love to travel as a salesperson, been traveling my whole life. I'm married to a flight attendant, 30 plus years. So my 3 kids grew up on an airplane. The mask thing, we all have an opinion. Obviously, wearing the mask protects others from us if we are asymptomatic or even symptomatic and potential spreaders. So as Mike alluded, we're seeing most airlines follow suit with not only their crew but passengers wearing the mask. Fewer flights. It was interesting to see that the capacity of these flights went down about 7%, I had read. So we're seeing that bump off the bottom. I've got a friend who's a mechanic at DFW, and last Wednesday, before the state of Texas opened up phase 1 restrictions at shelter in place, they had about 3,000 boardings across DFW, and Friday that shot up to 10,000 pretty quickly. So pretty steep week over week increases. I think we are going to see with these cleaning and sanitation new guidelines that folks are feeling a little more comfortable with the flying. Fewer seats on buses. And then if you could flip to the next slide.
Let's see. Yeah, Michael, I think I was going to mention, I saw this graphic that talked about airplane air is safer than you think, and that it circulates in a vertical fashion, which gave me peace of mind, because I'll confess I've gotten on a flight recently and thought about germs recirculating for the next 3 hours. But what this said is that the plane mixes fresh air every 2 to 3 minutes, which is a tremendous relief. And then, of course, we've heard about the healthcare quality HEPA filters that they use. But I know when I posted this on LinkedIn, I was amazed at how many likes and comments I got and how people also felt relieved. So it gets to psyche. With that, we're now going to switch to gifting. For a long time, we were doing on-site gifting, but we think this may be the year of pre-gifting. So, Julie?
Yeah, a little bit of pre-gifting, but maybe still a little bit of on-site presence. In the short term, I think it's going to look very different. We may see more of these hygiene-focused gifts to promote a sense of comfort, although personally, I hope we don't over-rotate this way too much, because I'm already tired of looking at face masks and sanitizer, but I get it. Even pre-COVID, as a company, we started doing more of these pre-trip online shopping experiences. So especially for long haul trips, we would let our attendees go online and pick luggage or Bose headphones or create a custom pair of Nikes or, something they could take with them on the trip and use on the trip. And, once COVID hit, we saw so many of the gifting companies really amping up their online experiences. So I think we'll see a lot more of this, even for, non-long haul, shorter trips. But, also on-site gifting, I think it's still important to have a presence, but it will definitely take a shift from the in-person trying on sunglasses and sandals, or congregating around a local artisan market to pick out your gift. One other thing to keep in mind is that the hotels are really limiting the amount of staff that can go into sleeping rooms. So I think room drop gifts will definitely be on a hiatus for the short term. But, there are alternatives. So depending on your audience, we can certainly do gift cards to replace, the trying on experience of the sandals and the sunglasses. We've seen some companies opting to display gifts each day at the hospitality desk. So kind of highlighting, what the attendees can expect to receive at home when they return each day. So that's kind of a fun way to tie it in and still keep the presence on site. And then we also have people who are utilizing the app. So I think Michael will talk a little bit more about an app, but, sending a push notification. Maybe there's a day at leisure and, that evening a push notification goes out with a picture of a hand-painted print that's been signed by an artist, and it says something like, we hope you enjoyed your day on the beach. When you return home, look for this in your mailbox to be a continual reminder of your fabulous beach day. So I think we have to get creative, but gifting has always been an important part of the experience. So we need to look for these ways that we can still offer this excitement and the fun, I think, both pre-trip and on-site.
Good. So our next area is what we call touchless foods. So there's a lot of changes that we foresee coming here. And Kim, what did your Reimagine team come up with on food and beverage? Kim, I think we got you on mute there.
You do. Now you can hear me. So I think this is an area where we will definitely see a change moving forward. For receptions, I don't see that we'll be doing butler passed hors d'oeuvres or having self-serve stations for a while. Waiters will have to either plate your selection, or another option is to offer items that could be pre-plated and then those plates be passed out. I think having more bars in the room will help where people are not congregating or crowding bars, which is what normally happens. So maybe increasing your number of bars to eliminate that. Offering plated dinners is likely the easiest solution for service, but is not the most ideal for the attendee as it limits their options. It also limits your ability to offer cultural foods that are specific to your destination. I think while attendees like to experience a cultural cuisine, they don't necessarily want that to be their only option, which would be the case if it's plated. I do think buffets are going to still be a possibility, but they'll look different. I think they'll be single-sided with hotel staff serving, so less people touching utensils. However, this is going to cause lines to back up, especially if we need to keep physical distancing. An alternative to that could be having more stations available, section off those tables and assign them to specific stations. You could easily have fun with this, building it into the theme and decor of your event so it looks like it was supposed to be that way all along. In addition, I think keeping less food on display and replenishing often would help limit the amount of food touched and possible contamination. Typical items such as salt and pepper shakers, sugar holders, condiments, salad dressings, etc., will no longer be part of the table setup. Rather, I think attendees are going to have to ask the waiter for those items. The waiter will bring them and then remove immediately and sanitize in between. For some of the people that have been in this business for a while, that all may sound very familiar because those are all the changes that occurred during the SARS outbreak. We did recover from that and got back to normal. So my hope is that eventually, we will be able to get back to normal practices. But for the foreseeable future, I think these changes will have to go into effect.
Good, good. Well, Kim, we're going to stay with you for a second on what we're calling less social events.
Yes. So I think the first thing here to talk about is, in general, no matter what size your group, more event space is going to be required in order to accommodate the physical distancing. This is potentially going to cause some issues for hotels that have multiple events going on at one time. a room that might have accommodated 450 people will likely now only accommodate 150 people. So space is going to be at a premium. With receptions, you'll need to allow for more personal space than previous. As I mentioned earlier, adding more bars will also help to avoid congestion. Plan on using more rounds with fewer people seated. You know, industry standard is 10 to 12 per 72 inch and 8 to 10 per 60 inch. The new norm may look more like 6 at a 72 inch and 4 at a 60 inch. One side effect of this that will hit the budget is you're going to need more table linen and centerpieces. Again, taking advantage of outdoor space, which I think certainly for incentive trips, we always try to do that when we've got a beach setting, but when it's available, always take advantage of the outdoor seating and be certain that your backup space is larger than traditionally used, so that if you need to go into your backup space, you can still maintain the space for physical distancing. Excuse me. I think while intimate, cozy gatherings may be a thing of the past, you can still create that feeling with the right layout and furnishings in a larger space. Consider reducing the number of events or times when you bring the group together. You could combine the awards and the welcome reception to reduce the number of times the group is gathering. Instead of everyone attending one awards dinner, break the group down to smaller groups based on a region, a district, or another differentiating factor, or do them on different nights. Another option is to give attendees more meals at leisure. I think they always enjoy that. I think entertainment's going to look different. I think dance floors may be a thing of the past for a while. You could potentially still have bands, but no dance floors. You could consider just doing background music, or having other entertainment such as an improv, a comedian, do a company talent show, cultural performers, something that does not require close contact. With regards to dine-arounds, I do think that these can still be done, but should be probably kept on property, where you've got more control of the cleaning and sanitation standards versus going off property. Obviously, seating people in smaller groups and staggering times so that you're not overwhelming the kitchen or crowding the restaurants. Some things to consider for alternative recognition in lieu of an awards dinner is to consider a virtual awards ceremony or doing something pre-recorded that could be still done at the hotel, and people would be able to tune in on a channel in their guest room. You could recognize the award winners in other ways, display photos on the hotel TV, or create a Hall of Fame in your hospitality suite, or a display on the beach for a beach walk.
Kim, that's really good. One of the ways I know I'm getting older is everywhere I go, the music is getting louder, it seems. So let's see. The next thing we're going to talk about is activities, and we're going to swing back to Julie to talk about group versus individual activities.
Yeah, real quickly on this, I think the presenters that you have here today are usually the ones who are preaching at you to keep your attendees together and put them on a catamaran together to go sailing and snorkeling or do a private beach party. But this may be the one, and hopefully the only time, where we're going to recommend the exact opposite of that. Destinations are scrambling to set guidelines for group activities. They will come back, but in the interim, we're hearing from our DMCs that major attractions and government monuments and museums will definitely be limiting visitors. So for now, we're really recommending truly individual activities like jet skis, horseback riding, ATVs, the individual boats that you can drive. Just really being cautious of keeping distance between attendees. And we've found that the DMCs are doing great jobs of bringing us options that really fit this bill. So I think this is going to be kind of an easy switch. I think we'll also see more days at leisure. Instinctively as a group, we all want to pack the agenda with activities, but even in surveys, we always see we want more downtime. So I think now's the time we definitely need to give that to them. On property, we can bring in local chefs and set up cooking classes or local artisans and have our attendees sign up, for time slots, so that we're avoiding those big groups. But getting creative again here. I think people are going to expect, expect these kind of measures. So again, just communicating that we're doing this for their safety and still giving them things to do on site will be important.
Good, thank you, Julie.
I know we're running low on time, Mike. I'm going to speed through this. There's an app for that. So it seems like we've been doing apps for eons, but really it's probably only been 4 or 5 years. And there's been more consolidation in this segment of our industry than really any other. So, the apps are figured out, they've been deployed, most have been using them, especially for incentive travel, outside of a cost-conscious smaller group, which still just doesn't make budget sense. But no printed material handouts. I think this is going to be the final straw that breaks those that hadn't yet adopted, and maybe get everybody on board, because it really eliminates these things and provides that one-to-one communication that, for emergency notifications, additional safety tips, and these behaviors, watching just us present, how many times I'm touching my own face, these are just the behaviors we got to continue to remind people. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, and an app would be a great way to do that.
Yeah, super. So the final one we have in the way of expectations is to talk to you about money. I know my wife always asks me, it's always about the money, isn't it? And I say, yep, it's always about the money on decision. So Kim, give us the view that says expenses are going to go up.
Yeah, so definitely safety is going to come at a cost, and expenses will increase. Transportation costs will increase with doing fewer people per vehicle. Larger banquet space is going to be needed to allow for fewer people at tables. More tables mean more linen and decor. More staff is going to be required, I think, to ensure that the vendors and hotels are following appropriate standards for cleaning and sanitation. I think more hotel staff is going to be required for banquet events, and I do expect we will probably be seeing menu prices increase to cover those costs, or potentially labor costs added by hotels to cover it.
Yeah, and attendance is going to shrink. It's going to be the other side of that, Mike. I'm seeing that in several clients. I had one that rebooked to next spring from this spring, and they added 50% of the rooms. So definitely expecting fewer qualifiers because of the circumstances this year. Second, third quarter is going to be hard for everybody to meet their goal that was established back in January for this year.
Yeah, good. At Brightspot, we work with a lot of public companies. Back when we went through the financial crisis in 08, 09, while we talked a lot about the recovery and whether it would be a V-shaped recovery, a U-shape, or bathtub-shaped recovery, one of the things we learned through that is with public companies, they may have to go through 2 to 3 budget cycles to replenish their budget. So we do believe everything will bounce back, but it may not fully bounce back by Q1 of 2021. But I will say, most of our clients, it looks like they're expecting everything to be back pretty much business as usual by Q1 2021. So that completes our 12 expectations of what to expect going forward after COVID for the next normal. We're now going to enter the Q&A section. We'd love for you to send in your questions. If you can find on your interface, whether it's the desktop or the app, that little circle, please chat in your questions, and we have somebody on our team that's going to help us with those in just a second. But as you're typing, I'll give you a summary of what we see as the 3 takeaways. First, really think about consumer psyche, or particularly that would be your attendees' psyche. How are they feeling about travel? Are they people that travel frequently, like those of us that are on this call that are, we're going to be willing to bounce back a little quicker? Or are they light travelers who, they may be a little more nervous about travel? Also, I would strongly say, don't forget the rainmaker psyche. We've seen some companies who they push out the program into 2021, and they're thinking about people's safety. But I feel like they're overlooking how that rainmaker is feeling, who was looking forward to a trip to Maui or Europe that they had worked for all year long. And to be told, hey, this is a rough time, we're going to do it in 2021. You got to think how they're going to feel and find some way to reward them or continue to engage those rainmakers who are driving revenues. And then make your decisions in 30, 60, 90-day intervals. I was a little disappointed when Mark Zuckerberg came out and said Facebook would have no live meetings over 50 people all the way through June 2021. I don't see how any business leader can have, know what it's going to be like a full year from now. So let's, we would encourage, make decisions in a quarter-to-quarter cycle, and then, we can always revise them if they go forward, if the fact pattern changes. So with that, let's see, we'll jump to Q&A. Michael, do you want to, Michael Presturzi, our marketing manager, that is, do you want to kind of ask some of these Q&A for us?
Yes, let's see. Fielding some questions right now. I think the first question we have up is, could you touch on the thoughts of returning to long-haul destinations?
Michael, you want long haul? That's kind of you were talked a little bit about travel.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I said it earlier at least once. I think smaller meetings are going to lead us back into this. We saw that kind of that one slide that showed us dropping down from 500 to 0 and coming back out of that slowly. Long haul, I think the consensus is third quarter. You heard Mike say a few different things there in his closing and takeaways, but the consensus I think we'd all agree is by if it's operating by third quarter of 2021, I think we're all safe. So that seems like worst case. I think if you're gonna shoot for first quarter or second quarter, obviously you're going to be a little more risk averse.
Hey, Michael, do you think long haul will take 1 month, 1 quarter, or 1 year longer than domestic to bounce back?
Yeah, I think it's going to take longer than a month, so somewhere between a month and a year. I know that's the easy way out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably split the difference.
Okay. Michael Pasturzi, how about another question?
All right, let's see. So for how long do you think these precautions will be in place for? If a vaccine is found and is made readily available, do you think things will slowly go back to normal?
Yeah, I'll take that. That may be the hardest question of all. I think on a lot of these, that McKinsey report that I mentioned, it had a fascinating graphic that showed 9 different shapes of recovery curves. One was a sharp V, one was sort of an L laying on its side, one had the kind of Nike swoosh look, and on the swoosh side, it showed bounces on it, which meant regional flare-ups. I think we're going to get a real good sense over the next 30 days as the country starts to open up. I've been fascinated to see what Sweden did, where Sweden didn't really shut down. They took some precautions, and they kind of reached a point of herd immunity much faster. So I believe it'll first be the health, more than the health's going to be the real driver, but then I believe perceptions and consumer psyche will bounce back a month or two after that. That's a really good question. Michael, how about a softball question? You're asking some hard ones for us.
Let's see. Do you anticipate seeing less children attend family-friendly incentive trips due to COVID?
Julie, you want to take family programs?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that I haven't thought much about. I will tell you that I personally put my child on a plane today. So, I mean, she's old enough to choose herself, but I hope not is my answer. I think, when safety returns, I hope they do take family trips. I hope they bring them. I'm going to go with the cautionary, no, I don't see a change. And
yeah,
I'll let
Julie, what may drive that answer is the age of the kids. If you have toddlers or precious preschoolers, you'll be cautious. If you have teenagers, you may be willing to put them on a plane. You may be willing to take chances. Yeah,
much like I did.
Yeah, that's a good question. Michael, how about another?
Another quick one. About how long after SARS precautions were implemented did things go back to what we considered to be the old normal?
Kim, do you want to do SARS? You mentioned that earlier and kind of remembered what that was like on the front line of operations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think SARS was nearly as bad as what we're seeing today at all. I don't think I had anything cancel. I definitely had programs postpone. And, from like the food and beverage aspect, to me, I think within 6 to 8 months, we were back. I'm optimistic that by January of next year that we'll not be seeing so much restrictions on it, and that is providing there's no flare up in the fall. But
While you say January, we do have some programs operating in the fall. So a lot of smart people are betting that this will lighten up. Interesting, SARS, as we probably all know, was another coronavirus, and it just sort of petered out and went away. So certainly we pray that would just, this virus would die off and go away and go somewhere else. Let's see, Michael, how about another?
All right, we have an accountability question. Do you recommend as part of registration that the attendee agrees not to hold liable the company or planner if they choose to attend and get sick?
Yeah, I don't see any way around this one in the interim. Like I said, I think it's a fine line of communication and not scaring people, but yeah, I think right out of the gate, there will be waivers showing no liability for sure.
You know, the waivers really set expectations. You know, I think even if somebody signs a waiver, some lawyer somewhere is going to come back and say, oh, you know, my client didn't know what they were signing, or they were signing this under duress. But yeah, it's definitely going to be something we're going to see.
I think likewise, the properties, the hotels will be asking us to sign those waivers as well. So.
All right, looks like we have one more question. What special and fair terms would you like to see in the contracts moving forward?
Special and fair terms. That is interesting. You know, feels like, you know, we just went through a window where we probably spent 6 weeks trying to rebook and reschedule a lot of these, where we saw a greater emphasis on the speed of just getting the transaction completed, because there was a compression of demand into the fall and into the spring, where it was becoming difficult to source property. But you know, I'm sure we'll see a little bit of an expansion in force majeure that we talked about. You know, I think the other reasonable and fair will be that Kim alluded to, in terms of asking for more space, needing more defined backup space options. Probably, you know, maybe not a contractual term, but just asking for the hotel to share their cleaning and sanitation policies. So it may not get written into a contract, but it would be part of the RFP evaluation. I don't know if anybody else on our team have any opinion on that. All right, well, let's see. Our team is going to be sheltering in place all afternoon, so we can stay as long as you want if we have more questions coming in. But Michael, is that reaching the end of our questions?
I think we have one final one to end on.
Okay.
Bit of a conjecture. So, do you think this next normal will be on for long, for short, or forever?
I will say it will be short. You know, it feels like everything we have ever experienced, that there's a reaction curve that usually starts with overreaction, and then, you know, it probably leads to caution, and then gradually it leads to mild comfort, and then it's back to the old normal. So, you know, what we're calling next normal, I think, is something we may see last maybe through Q1 of next year. I don't know that we'll see it go beyond that, is my guess, but I'm not Dr. Fauci and Dr. Bricks. We'll see what happens if we do get flare-ups and how long this goes. But hopefully for all of us, we do develop some immunity to this thing, and that it does fizzle out from being a front page story every day.
I see that our own Holly Swansea made a comment that we have very short memories, and that when we go back to normal very quickly, and I think that'll be the case. I was at the grocery store the other day and saw 2 masks, so I think, you know, people will get tired of and want to go back to the old normal.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, somebody mentioned Zika. You know, Zika was a big thing there for a while, but, you know, we don't hear many questions about Zika anymore. So, yeah, hopefully this does decline for us. Let's see, maybe an administrative detail. Our marketing team will follow up after this webinar at some point, probably later today, with copies, PDF copy of these slides that you have. And then we're hoping either today or probably more likely tomorrow to post a blog that has the explanation of these 12 expectations that we have for the next normal. So we really appreciate everybody's attention. I can tell this was you sharing your time meant a lot to us. This was by far and away our largest demand for a webinar. It probably exceeded anything that we've done by a factor of 3. So I think it shows that all of us are trying to figure out what the next normal looks like. And Michael, unless you tell me there's any more questions, I believe we'll adjourn the internet back to their desktop.
Yep, back to your work from home, regularly scheduled events.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kim Fox. Thank you, Michael Butler. Thank you, Julie Blank. Also, thank you, Michael Pasturzi, for that. And we'll be sending out those slides and posting that blog. So thank you, everybody. Have a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.